Welcome, everyone. I'm Kirsten, I'm the founder of Uncommon, and today we are so excited to be talking about a film, not about the film. We're talking with the people who made the film, the people who ideas created the film, called The Stimming Pool. So, The Stimming Pool is a film made by autistic artists that shows the world in a completely new way. So, it's not just a regular movie. It's made using what's called co-creation, which is where you bring a group of people together and bring all of their ideas together, and we'll hear a bit more about that. And it's also experimenting with something called an autistic camera, which is a creation of the team, which I'm really excited to hear more about as well. And that's sort of where we're thinking about how we use film to help people see and feel the world in the way that many of us as autistic people do. So the film was made by a group of autistic creatives called the Neurocultures Collective, along with filmmaker Stephen Eastwood. And they've just created something really amazingly unique. It mixes real life stories, fantasy, animation, hints on spooky horror movies inside the film. And it's about the kind of places that we as autistic and neurodivergent people experience every day, spaces which sometimes we might feel really intensely. It's about how our attention shifts. It's about how also we find spaces that are creative or inspiring or safe or peaceful, or how we make our own spaces in our own imaginations. So, to hear more about it, tonight we're joined by Georgia Kamari Brown and Robin Elliott-Knowles, two of the film's co-directors. Georgia is a filmmaker who loves exploring how autistic people experience the world in really creative ways. She studied film at university and is passionate about showing autistic perspectives through storytelling. Robin is an artist who paints, draws, creates graphic novels. I know we've got lots of people in the room here who love all of these things, will really relate. And he also runs the B Movie fan club. I know we've definitely got some B Movie fans here too, where he shares weird and wonderful horror movies with other fans. He's interested in history, storytelling, and how different identities are represented in art. So I'm super excited. Let's dive in. Georgia and Robin are here to share how they got into filmmaking, how they made this really one-of-a-kind film, and also share what it's like trying to kind of create a film using an autistic camera, a different way of seeing that lets everyone see the world in a way that feels really real to them. So let's give them a big welcome.
Yay!
Welcome, you guys.
Hello. Welcome. So, thank you for that intro, Kirsten. I'm just going to briefly introduce myself, but I feel like a lot of people know me by now. I'm Mivy. I'm one of the facilitators at Uncommon, and I host these kind of things. And I'm going to quickly speed into showing one of the trailers that was sent to us for the Stimming Pool, as it's not quite out yet. And then we can get into the questions, and then everybody can ask questions throughout, or there's also a Q&A section that we'll do at the very end. And depending on how relevant questions are, I may bring them up or save them to the end. So let me reshare my screen because I just realized I didn't share the sound. And that's on me. And there. Just to give everybody an idea because it's not quite out yet. When does the film come out? I feel like in my notes it was, I have the 28th of March. Is that correct?
28th of March is right. Yeah.
Lovely. Cool. Nice. I'll play this.
Hello and welcome to the B-Movie Fan Club. But first, a word of warning. The film you're about to see is of a content so horrifying, so gruesome, so degrading, and so ambiguously bad that those of you with a nervous disposition may want to leave this auditorium or even this very cinema right now as we speak, before the film starts, and not even for the very first 15 minutes of it. However, if you can stand the shocking content of the most degrading content you'll ever see in the history of cinema, then stay where you are. But remember, you have been warned.
Amazing. Cool. So we had like two intros there, but thank you so much for joining us today, Georgia and Robin, and John as well. I know that Kirsten has already introduced it, but I'd love to know, how could you tell us about the stimming pool in your own words?
Who's going first?
I don't mind. I can go first if you like, or if Robin would like to.
Georgia, you go first.
Okay. In my own words, it's it's difficult to explain it in words because it's a very sensory film. It's not a very straightforward film. But I would say it's sort of a manifestation of autistic experience through film. And it's not necessarily about autistic characters or about autistic people who are identified as autistic, but as you know, as autistic filmmakers, I think we wanted to show our experience of the world through film and from the point of view of like an autistic perspective. So creating a world that is very hypersensory and a world that is filled with like puzzles and a world that is built on patterns, and lots of other things like that. So I would describe it as a uniquely autistic film in the film itself, and it's made by autistic directors. So it's a full autistic production.
Really like that, Robin.
It's very much a film made by autistic people, not about autism. Making the camera autistic and a way of just showing it from our perspective rather than from someone else's.
Yeah, it's a film that doesn't try to explain autism. It's not a kind of, here's autism for you in a nutshell and here's what it's about. It's a film that allows autistic people to explore cinema and a visual narrative in a quite unique way.
Yeah. Again, I know that people haven't seen it yet, but I think even just from those clips, it did feel very sensory, especially with when they're in the pool and the camera's kind of tilting. It felt like the camera itself was stimming, which I really like. And I'm gonna use some examples, which, you know, like I feel like. So in one of the clips, example, when they're in a bar, a lot of the noise, like from the hand dryer, seems to be turned up quite a lot. And, you know, I feel like a lot of us are quite sensitive to noise, which is such a great example of, again, kind of making the audience feel the way that a lot of people feel. How else did you kind of go about creating those moments and making the camera have that autistic viewpoint again without being so like outwardly like this is a film about autism type thing?
I like when you picked up on the camera stimming because that was such a huge part of it for us, is making a camera that, like Robin said, the camera is autistic, and that it can stim and that it can learn from its from masking. So if you think about cameras in most films as masking, because you don't really notice that the camera's there, and it's just sort of invisible, but you start to be aware of the camera when it becomes familiar with stimmy movements and starts delighting in like the stimmy movement of the camera you saw in the first clip. So that's, you know, a big example of that for us was putting stimming into the actual form of the film, and definitely with sound as well. I think the soundtrack and the soundscape was really important to make sure that there was this constant like hum of noises, because there's never, you know, in my experience as an autistic person, I'm rarely anywhere where there isn't some form of noise, even if it's just like a, you know, an air conditioner or something like that. So, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of people can relate to. So we wanted to tune those sounds up to make it feel really quite visceral. And I think in a way, it not only is a demonstration to people who don't know what that's like to see sort of what it's like, but also for autistic people watching to be like, oh, that's my experience of the world in film, which they may not have seen before, because I don't often see my sensory experience depicted in film. So it was very much a way to, you know, allow that form of experience to be in a film.
Yeah, I completely see that. It's so nice to like feel seen while you're watching it. Was there a way of kind of balancing that so it wasn't too overstimulating for like some people who are sensitive to noise, or were you just kind of like, we're making this kind of feel the way that we exactly feel? And Robin, feel free to chime in with anything from your experiences as well.
Well, I think, for instance, the pub scene is we when we've shown it as a sort of less stimulating evening, we were taking the sound down. It almost doesn't work as well, because part of the reason why the sound is so loud and so overpowering in that scene is because that's what it's like for everybody. You know, you go into those pubs and it is kind of overwhelming, the amount of noise and chaos around you. And I think that scene works really well in terms of sound levels and sort of that feeling of I'm overpowered by this. And you can see the character of Drew walking through it and is very uncomfortable about the levels of everything around her, of the interaction with people and the sound.
Yeah, I also like how then when she went to the toilet and it felt like that moment of peace that you have like away from all the sound, and I really related to that. I feel like so often the toilet is like a weird little safe space away from everything. Yeah, definitely. Um, cool. So kind of related to that, what was the most like unexpected or surprising moment of making this film? I'll go with you, Georgia
Yeah,
first.
I'll go. We're both really polite, so we always wait. Um, I think the most unexpected thing um, was, so we went into this project with the idea in mind was that it would be fully accessible set, working conditions, and that's not something I've worked in film for a few years, and it's not something I've ever really experienced. I have autism and I also have chronic fatigue syndrome. So I need quite a lot of rest breaks, and I've never been able to get that. And for that reason, I felt quite alienated in film, because I feel like I haven't found a place where I can work. Um, and I knew that going into it, it would be fully accessible, but I didn't expect everyone to be all hands on board to make it as accessible as possible. And it was like a really amazing experience, and I feel quite spoiled. And so there's a lot of things I didn't expect, that I was pleasantly surprised by, like having accessible call sheets. So for people that don't know, a call sheet is a document you get before you go on set, which says what locations you're going to be filming at, the order of shooting, and everyone who's going to be there. But the call sheets had a picture of everyone's face on it, so that beforehand you could familiarize yourself with everyone, so you didn't go in feeling a bit like wary about things, and you were more familiar. And pictures of all the locations, so you felt a bit, you could prepare in advance. We had rest breaks. Anything, if we wanted to stop doing a shot, if we wanted to make a change to something, if we were uncomfortable, we were allowed to do that. We had accessibility riders, so we could write in advance things that we needed, like stim toys or chairs to sit on or things like that, and they were provided. And yeah, we had shorter days as well compared to what I'm used to, which made it, it was less pressure. It didn't feel like everyone was like, go, 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 we have to do this now to save time and money. It was really relaxed, and it was really like, it gave us more room to be creative. And so, yeah, the most unexpected thing was how much I enjoyed, being on set as opposed to sets I've been on before. And it just felt like such a refreshing experience. And I really hope that, that experience is something I can, or other people can transfer into their own set, so we can make the industry a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, I really sorry, Robin, you carry on and then I'll say a little thing. I'd love to hear your experience as well.
Well, I've never been a director before, so it was a bit of a challenge for me. But I went ahead with it, and I think I did pretty well. Funny thing is, I always remembered to say action, but never remembered to say cut. And I got on well with the actress and the actor. We had a Venezuelan actress and a deaf actor who was the one playing the zombie. And I said to them, when in terms of acting, think of the moment coming, think of a cork being pulled off a bottle. The anticipation of making a sudden movement or like turning your back and stuff like that.
I think the other thing that was important was that the group had a long time to develop this and to get to know each other, and all of the conversations leading up to it had created a group who trusted one another. I mean, the word yes was used far more often than no, and people were always willing to accept new ideas and to even be challenged on things, but in a really, really supportive way. I don't think I've ever met a group of people who were so supportive of each other and so caring of each other. So by the time we got onto set, those usual struggles between artists just weren't there because people had already been talking a lot and had made decisions together. And I think that was the main thing that comes across. This is a group who worked with each other, not against each other.
Yeah, I feel like there's and I'll go into that in my next question, but there's definitely like a really nice balance and everything kind of feels quite interwoven, but everybody also has the space for their own like segments and their own kind of like experiences that are shown, which is really cool. I also really like Georgia, what you said there about call sheets, and somebody else said it, where call sheets are often super confusing. And just in general, I feel like whenever I'm going to a new location, just the like anxiety of being like, okay, where's the bathroom? Where is the exit? Where can I sit? And where can I put my stuff? If that's like already taken care of, it must leave so much more room for like just creativity and playing and having fun. So that's really lovely to hear. Going on to my next question, which is, what was and you've touched upon it, what was working in a collective like, and more so like, how did you go about balancing the ideas, especially like I said, like it feels separate but also really kind of like interwoven at the same time. Um, Robin, I'll go with you, or if you need more time, then I'll go with Georgia.
Oh, you ready to answer? Oh, can you put the question succinctly again?
Yes. So, how did you go about balancing everyone's ideas and working together as a collective?
Well, we all listened to each other's ideas. We came up with them. We came up with mind boards, which were on an exhibit at the exhibition at Nottingham Castle. We just listened to each other's ideas and we put them forward.
Yeah, maybe you should explain that. As well as the film, there's a major exhibition that went alongside it, which had a massive wall with the mind map that had been created. I think it was through Mosaic, I think, and that was a very early stage where lots of people's ideas were just thrown in a way at this thing. So there was lots of little lines that came after, little bubbles, little ideas. So all those ideas have been spread already, and we'd had that chance. Maybe George, you could talk more about that. But that mind map mosaic approach at the beginning meant that everyone had shared a lot of ideas before we even began.
Yeah, so we used a platform called Mural, and for anyone that's unfamiliar, it's basically just like a virtual whiteboard, but you can make it really massive. So you can just put so much. You can put videos, images, like sticky notes, text, anything you want, and you can range it in any way that makes sense. And for us, this kind of became like we made several drafts of it, so it kind of became like our script. Was this just like explosion of images and brain things, and which I think makes more sense for a film like this. And we never really had a formal script. We always had it was just like a document that just like had a synopsis to guide us, because we knew we weren't doing this in a conventional way, and I don't think as autistic people we should be expected to work in these kind of formatted ways. And so I think this was a lot more useful, especially working in a collective, because we could all put our ideas and then we could find links or like branches between the ideas. So in the end, it sort of resembles like like a seed with like roots coming out of it. It's really interesting, and you can just see ideas developing and growing over time. And I'll also say that I don't think a film like this really can be made, like a film that is about, that conveys the autistic experience, if it wasn't made by a group, because, as we know, autism it can't be generalized by one person. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. We're all completely different. And so we wanted to have a wide representation, and it could be wider. I think there's a lot of people with autism that have more complex access needs, who aren't necessarily represented in the collective. And but we, with the collective members that we have, I think we have quite a broad spectrum of representation. So I think each of our contributions to the project, is of our own creative expression, and sort of the amalgamation of all that is a representation of what an autistic film can look like. And if it was made by just one person, it wouldn't have that same effect, because you wouldn't get that scope of experience. And I think we all really understood that, and that's why it was so easy to collaborate with each other, because we were all just so excited about each other's ideas and how different our approaches and experience was. I'd never worked with anyone like Robin or Lucy or Sam or Ben before, and it was just so wonderful to work with people that were also autistic but had such a different set of ideas and experience in the world. So for me, I had a lot of curiosity about other people's ideas and how we put them together. So we all had a really positive approach to it. Yeah.
One question I have from that is, how did the collective kind of come to be? Like, did you all kind of find each other? Yeah, how did that kind of happen?
Well, the project started from a research project at Queen Mary University, by Stephen Eastwood, who's one of our directors. And they hosted workshops as part of the project, like creative workshops, with activities like eye tracking, which is something that's in the Stimming Pool, is an example of eye tracking. And things like you were able to mix sound on films differently, so you could highlight sounds that were more interesting, and fiddle with that as well, and that was really interesting. And so through that, I think they met some of the collective, and also they work with Project Artworks in Hastings, which is where Robin's based, in Hastings, to collaborate with artists. So I think, yeah, we all came via Stephen, and then we started doing meetings on Zoom in 2020 during the pandemic. So we didn't really all meet in person till much later. But yeah, that's sort of how it began.
That's so interesting. One comment that I've also kind of had in my mind as well is that so many of the clips, especially from like the B Movie Club, they all feel like really natural. And I feel like at some point, like especially towards the beginning, I thought it was a documentary. And then of course, like you had yourselves in it, but also like in it while you were planning the film as well. How was that like a creative decision, and how was that kind of decided upon? Like how much of yourselves did you insert into the film, I guess?
I think, Robin, do you want to answer that, because you're in the film? And
How
I'm not.
much of yourself is it in the film? What about you?
If I'm honest, I don't know. I would say several frames, several scenes.
Well, I think it's a difficult. Yeah, Robert might differently understand the question. I suppose the question is, how much of you is in the film, not how much physically, but how much of you personally is in the film, the way you are represented.
I'm afraid I still don't know.
I think I'd say
pick it
that.
up if it's better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the B movie exists anyway. Somebody's actually asked a question about what a B movie is. Do you want to explain what a B movie is, Robin?
A film that was shown in the old days before the main feature film would be an hour long.
Yeah. So they were kind of like a little intro film for the main feature, and they were quite often made by directors who were just starting out and who were trying new ideas and some of them were quite awful in terms of the standard of filmmaking and acting and props. But that's kind of what the people love about them now. They kind of enjoy those things. So the B Movie fan club existed already, and I think the group thought it was a really good way of introducing this idea of a film within a film within a film, basically. So Robin wasn't making that up in a way, because whenever he does the B Movie fan club, he actually does introduce the films just like that. He will. Maybe you should explain how you do that, Robin, at the B Movie fan club, introducing a film.
I look up informations on the film. I then tell them like trivias of the film and what it's about.
You quite often give away all the secrets of the film as well, actually, which is quite funny. so Robin won't sort of hide all the facts about the film. He will actually tell everybody how the lava is actually made out of porridge being poured down a model, and that's part of the joy of the evening, is Robin's introduction to them. So that whole sequence is kind of true, but dramatized for the sake of what we were doing. And I think, Georgia, that's right. A lot of the scenes were kind of quite honest, just that we were taking them one step beyond the level of, just filming a documentary. They're kind of dramatized scenes, do you think?
Well, yeah, I think initially when the project first started, it was a documentary because it had documentary funding, which is a lot less than fiction funding. But I think we went in already knowing we wanted to have a hybrid approach to kind of, lend into that element of the autistic experience not being so totally straightforward. And I think it goes from documentary to fiction kind of back and forth in different points, and it can be quite confusing. But I don't know, for me, that's just kind of an experience of life itself being quite confusing and different and varying. And so yeah, there are lots of documentary sequences, but you can even see in those documentary sequences the camera is quite restless and the camera gets a bit stimmy and finds a detail that's not necessarily the person that it's filming that it wants to kind of focus on, and from there the camera gets more creative, and then the film itself gets more creative, and the film itself takes you through our creative process. A lot of it is about creating, and like you say, there is that scene with all of us at Project Artwork sat around the table talking about how do we end the film, or what is the next scene in the film. And that was a real discussion that we had. I mean, it was a little bit staged because we had like prompts and the camera was there, but we were basically recreating real discussions that we were having to show and unravel the creative process, because we did want it to be a film about creating and the liberty to create as autistic people. And so that fusion of fiction and documentary really came in handy for that, because it really illustrated a really flexible form of storytelling.
I really like that. And it did feel very much, and somebody else said it, like filmception. Like it definitely felt like a film within a film. One question that I have that might feel like a bit of a repeat question, so we can move on from it. But so a lot of young people, and myself actually, sometimes struggle to express like their needs, and they also feel like they don't fit in certain spaces. How did working on this film kind of help you understand and also advocate for your own needs?
I think it was just a very from the very start, it was an environment that was focused on accessibility and also autism as like an identity. So I think we knew, there was never going to be a point where we would say, actually, I need this or I need a break, and it would be met with, oh no, we can't do that, because that would go against the entire point of the project. Like the Autism Through Cinema project at Queen Mary was about how do we introduce autistic perspectives into film, not just on screen, but behind the camera as well. And so from the start, I just felt very comfortable. And also when we were working on the film, a large proportion of the crew were neurodivergent as well. Not all autistic, but we had a lot of crew members with like ADHD and autism as well. And so I think we felt all really comfortable with each other. We had an assistant director, and for people who don't know, assistant director's job is mainly to kind of keep the crew organized, keep the set organized, keeping time, making sure everyone's where they need to be, just so the director doesn't have to focus on that. So having an AD who was neurodivergent was really useful, because they're the ones you go to say, do we have time for this, can we make time for that? And he was so understanding of all of that, because I think he could resonate with our experience as well. So having a neurodivergent AD was fantastic, and I felt that I could say no to things. I think there were a couple of times where we were doing a scene, and I would say, I actually don't want to do this now. It's quite overwhelming, and we just wouldn't do it. And that was the most important thing, was comfort, and making sure people didn't feel like they were being pushed to do something they weren't comfortable in doing, because it goes against the whole point of what we were doing. So, yeah.
Well, during the filming, that I was to be filmed with my family having dinner, and I was really unhappy with the idea. They were all very okay with not doing it, but then I was made a bit more calmer, I think. So I went ahead and did it, and it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, so basically we set up a whole day setting up a track through our living room and blocking out all the windows in the house. And Robin was like, I don't want to do this. And Robin, in most circumstances, the crew would have gone ballistic, and they didn't. They just went, Robin doesn't want to do it. Robin doesn't want to do it. We won't do it. But because of that kind of atmosphere, Robin came around to the idea, and we went ahead. I mean, it was, but that was the atmosphere. It was like, we're not going to pressurize anybody to do anything. If they don't want to be filmed sleeping in bed, you didn't want to do that either, did you? No. then they didn't, and that was really important to the film making process.
On that, actually, Robin, you mentioned that this is your first time being like a co-director. How was that experience for you, and how did you like prepare for it, or again, like feel comfortable doing it?
Well, for my joy of filmmaking, I love films. I've always loved films since I was a little boy, and I've never been a director before. If I'm honest, I just don't know how I obviously seen and heard like films, maybe films about filmmaking, directors saying cut and action and stuff like that. And because of and I'm not sure, I can't remember how I became.
Are you like an Edward Jr.? D. Wood Jr.?
Yes.
Do you know who? Well, explain who he is. He
was a director in the 50s who made some of the best, worst films of all time, but that's why we loved them. But he loved what he was doing. It wasn't just for the money. And he was also great friends with Bela Lugosi, who was having a really terrible time near the end of his life. And he starred in his films.
What was his name again?
Edward D. Wood Jr.
So Edward D. Wood Jr. made fairly rubbish films, and
Tim Burton made a film about him.
Yeah, it's a really good film if you get a chance to see it.
With Johnny Depp and Martin Landau and Bill Murray.
Yeah, and it kind of shows that the passion of somebody who wants to make a film but isn't constrained by the kind of rules around, and it's a beautiful little film, really. And I think Robin's approach to directing was probably inspired by him more than anybody else.
That's very interesting. A tiny question that I have, which has no relevance to anything, but there's B movies and then there's cult classic movies. And often I feel like I've seen that some B movies turn into cult classics. How does that what's the difference there? And feel free to not answer this, because this is just me asking a question. But I feel like it might be a Robin one.
Robin says he doesn't know.
It's just magic. Movie magic.
It's a very difficult question. I think what happens is that there's a state. It's like Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is Edward D. Wood Jr.'s.
That one's a cult classic.
That is a cult classic, but it's
the Blob. The original Blob is a cult classic.
Yeah, but I think what happens is there's just a growing sense around a film that it actually goes beyond being an awful film to being something quite of itself, isn't it, really? But it's hard to say. If we all knew what made a cult classic, we'd all be doing it.
Yeah, That's very true. Oh no, that was just for my own interest. Um, stimming is such a like important part of this film, of course, Stimming Pool. What does stimming look like for you, Georgia?
It's interesting because I'm one of those people that sort of learned not to stim when I was like a kid and a teenager because I did ballet classes. So it was always about moving in a very precise and correct way, and you were told off if you moved the wrong way. So I've always suppressed my stims, and it's only in the last few years from knowing other autistic people and being involved in this project that I've really understood what I do to stim, and that I've always stimmed, but I've always had kind of shame about it. But I'm unlearning that now. So for me, it's just a lot of movement. The character, the shapeshifter who you saw in the first clip, doing those movements, that character was something I created based on myself, really, and about how I'm learning. You know, it for starters in like my own private spaces to move in really, you know, ways that feel right or stimmy that if I did in public, people would, you know, perhaps be a bit weird about. Um, and they're not necessarily dancerly movements either. They're just kind of like a lot of repetitive, a lot of jumping, a lot of like this, um, or like animal movements. I like doing animal movements as well. And then we called the character the shapeshifter because of that element of being able to move in different ways, or to become an animal, to become like a bug, or you know, to become a fish. You know, move in any way that you like. So for me, it comes in that, and I also I mean, Robin does this more than me, but I do like to monologue, and I like to um recite quotes from things, or like I do accents a lot. Um and that for me is stimming because it's like it's performance, it's echolalia, it's like expression, it's all those things. So yeah, I think I've really expanded my idea of what stimming is, and I think through the film we've shown like lots of actually different ways of stimming. And there is a bit where the shapeshifter kind of shapeshifts accents, and they're walking down the street and using, and that was also something that I that came from me. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been stimming for the past few years. But before then, I really didn't stim at all. So yeah.
I've always been allowed to stim. My parents have always allowed it, and I've always acted out scenes from my favourite films, and I quote a lot of my favourite lines from films. And I remember when I was little also acting out Shakespeare's plays.
Shakespeare is very difficult, so that sounds quite interesting. Are there any ones that you kind of keep going back to, or like any favorites?
Macbeth is my favourite Shakespeare play.
Mm.
My favorite, I used to recite a lot of speeches from The Tempest. Caliban's speech in particular, I could do that one.
Interesting
wow.
that Shakespeare. Maybe it's the timing or something. Yeah, I feel like I do a lot of kind of silly voices while I'm talking. Or just, yeah, I'm sure that there's other things. But again, I also feel like I kind of dampened it quite a lot. Now I'm kind of relearning what stimming really is. Cool. So I'm gonna save one question to the end, and we're gonna move on to like the Q&A from some people. Let's see. Do. So one person is asking, the autistic experience is very different for a lot of people. How did you guys come to the specific choices on what and how to show these experiences on camera?
I think I think you're right that there is a huge variation in experiences of autism, and I don't think we approach this saying we're going to represent everyone's experience or we're going to encapsulate autism in one film, because it would be impossible to do that. And it would kind of be counterproductive, because I think what we were trying to do is propose a way for autistic people to make films in different ways. And so I think we went into it with our own approaches and informed by our own autism, and in turn learning about each other's. But obviously that leaves out a huge variation of experiences, and I think, you know, we have left out sort of the experience of people who don't speak, or people who have like complex mobility needs and things like that. And so I think the film is sort of a stepping stone, I'd hope, for ideas of accessibility for more films like this, for more autistic people. But yeah, so I mean, and on the thing about choices, they all come from our experiences, and I've always, wanted a way to express things like stimming, hyperfixation, meltdown. How do you translate such bodily feelings into film? Because autism is so rooted in the body for me, and it's so difficult to translate. So that's why, there's not a lot of dialogue in the film. A lot of it is through the camera work and through the stimminess of the camera and through the sound design, and through the structure, which is kind of weaving in and out of different stories, because life is kind of like a puzzle in that sense. And that's a representation of my experience, and other people have said that it's very similar to their own, but I don't think it's ever going to be a definition or diagnoses, because there's so much more out there. So yeah, the film isn't sort of like a guide for the autistic experience, but I'm hoping it can provide inspiration for other autistic people to pick up a camera or a paintbrush and make something from their own creation.
Yeah, I really like that. Robin, is there anything you'd like to add to that, or I can move to the next question?
Next question.
Cool. Do you expect more movies like this in the future after your release? So thinking about like from your group, also, do you think like this might hopefully inspire other people to make films like this?
I'm pretty sure anyone who's seen this film, who's enthusiastic about this type of thing, will be inspired to make films of their own. May not be of the same look, but maybe of a similar look. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like it would definitely.
Yeah, I
Sorry, you
definitely
carry
have
on.
seen. Sorry, I've definitely seen, in the past 10 years, as we're sort of moving away from thinking of autism as sort of like as like a negative, and we're starting to see it more as positive, that more artists are feeling empowered to be openly autistic in their work, and that's sort of showing itself in film now as well. So, there's been a few films in the past few years that have been quite honest about autism, and I'm really hoping that that continues and that we can start to be more honest about it, and more autistic creators can take authorship of that, and it's I think it's encouraging, I think, at this point, that there's not many, because you can do it and there's more of an audience. So yeah, just make stuff because people are looking for it.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely opens up like a dialogue for people as well. And yeah, it's definitely making like a safe space for other people to share their own experiences too. Um, okay, this one's an interesting one. What like high school subjects do you suggest for someone who wants to study film, specifically more on the directing side of things at university? This might be a Georgia one.
So I'll give my example. My my GCSEs, what did I do? I did my basic subjects, and then my options were history, drama, and German. So I didn't do anything that was directly film related or like media studies, anything like that. I chose the things that I really enjoyed, and I think that was the right thing to do. I think um, as a director, your most important skill is your experience, and your most important tool is your experience and the things that you learn from just the world or about yourself. Um, and you can learn things about directing and making films from, finding other people who do film, working with them and learning from them. I've learned the most about film, not from university, which is ironic because I did a film degree. I've learned the most from working with other people who do film, or asking people for advice, uh, and having that practical But I think if you're in high school and you really want to direct, the best advice I can do is just direct something. Even if you have a camera on your phone and make something on there, you can make something really cool. I think choose the subjects that you are most interested in, because those interests can inform films that you might make later. There might be something you learn that's really interesting in a subject that's nothing to do with film, but it will become something that you want to merge with film or make films about later. So yeah, I'd say just make sure you're doing what you enjoy, because then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also went to uni to study film, and I think it's definitely about like creating things. And I did my subjects that I enjoyed. I then did a BTech in creative media, and then I went to uni. But I think it is, like I had somebody who did like chemistry in my course, so like I think that's one of the subjects where you can move into it and it doesn't really matter what you've done before that. It's just kind of showing you passion. Um, yeah, okay, we have a couple more questions and we have around 10 minutes left, so I'll try speed through a couple of them. This might be a good one for both of you. What other films inspired you in making this film? Robin, I'll go with you first if you're happy to do that.
He's thinking. What other films inspired you, Robin? Or generally?
I have no clue, because it was the whole group that came up with the ideas. I did come up my ideas with the storyboard for my love of drawing. And
what inspired the animation, for instance? Is there anybody inspired? You were inspired by a particular artist, weren't you?
Stan Saki.
Explain that.
He's an American-Japanese artist who does a comic book series called Usagi Yojimbo. It's set in Edo century Japan, and all the characters are anthropomorphic animals, and the main hero, Usagi, is a rabbit. But the stories are taken seriously, and you learn the history of Japan and the samurai. And
because you're also very interested in history anyway, aren't you? So you're now doing what with it?
Taking the ideas and making them my own.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Georgia, do you have any that were kind of like even like a North Star, I guess, for making this film?
Yeah, I mean, when we were making our mind maps, we just threw a lot of films on there. I'm a bit of a David Lynch like nut. Like I'm obsessed with him and Cronenberg, so I love things that are a bit weird and experimental and a bit gross. But there's a Thai filmmaker called Apichatpong Weerasethakul, and he did a film called Uncle Boonmi, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, and that was a major reference for us because it's a very sensory film. It's very slow, and it's a narrative that kind of weaves in with fables and stories, and it's like stories within stories, and it doesn't really make much kind of sense, but you really feel where it's going, and it's just a wonderful film. And there's a filmmaker called Jacques Tati who did a film called Playtime, which is really about social observation. And so you have these really wide shots and these constructed sets and buildings of people going into offices, and it's quite satirical. It's a comedy of just observing, mundane life. But we were very inspired by that sort of analysis of neurotypicality from a distance that we really felt that we got from Tati. So yeah, I think they were our main ones. There's all sorts of stuff in there. Definitely, again, from my side, there's a lot of Lynch, and a lot of Cronenberg. But yeah, there's a lot.
Ray Harryhausen was another person who influenced me. The one who made Jason and the Argonauts, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And it was thanks to him we have Pirates of the Caribbean and The Nightmare Before Christmas and The Lord of the Rings and all films like that. They were all influenced by him, and his work.
And Robin's programme, The Neurodiversity, is at your palace at the moment, and one of the films we chose was Playtime. And it is George is right, it's an extraordinary film. If you get a chance to see it, it's not necessarily an easy film to watch, I'd have to say, because if you are stimulated by sound and visual images, there's a lot of sound and visual stuff going into this film. And I was always confused whether Jacques Tati's character, because he plays a character in his own films, whether he's the autistic person and the world's normal, or whether he's normal and the world's autistic, because his worlds he creates are quite extraordinary and quite dysfunctional in a way. And it's, yeah, he's very early Mr. Bean, but better than Mr. Bean because he's cleverer.
That's super interesting. I'll have to have a look. I definitely feel like I see those influences now, especially like Georgie, you said about the kind of human observation, and especially in like the office scene. Um,
Well, it's
uh,
also that because in the film, as Georgia said, there's very little language in
mm,
Stimming Pool, and in Jacques Tati films, again, there's almost. I mean, I think the script will probably go down to 1 page. I think in terms of the actual dialogue, but the density of the world is very much echoed in the way that Georgia and the rest of the team kind of created this piece called the Stimming Pool. You definitely look at Jacques Tati and go, "Got it. I see the link there." So I would definitely recommend seeing some of his work.
hmm. Okay, now I have things to watch, other than Stimming Pool. Okay, so we have three more questions with my own. So this one we've kind of touched on, but do you have any advice for autistic actors or filmmakers to advocate for themselves in a traditional film environment? And this might be more of a Georgia one, I feel.
I think people often feel that once someone comes up and says, "Hey, I have access needs, can you accommodate them?" and that's accepted, then more people can come forward, and it's like an avalanche effect. Um, so I think don't be afraid. I think we live in a society now that's a lot more accepting of difference, and that isn't so, you can't have these things. And if people do say that, then it's like you probably don't want to work with these people. So yeah, don't be afraid to tell people exactly what it is that you need, because once you do, more people will. Or because regardless of if you're disabled or if you're neurodivergent or not, everyone has access needs. Everyone has things that makes working more comfortable. So it's no different to someone, being like, "Oh, I'm a bit tired. Can I sit down?" It's like if you need a quiet space, to wear headphones. If there's only a certain amount of things you can do, if you get overwhelmed, you just need a break. Just say it. And most of the time, from my experience, people will understand. Yeah.
I think George is also right. There's a kind of level where you have to go, do I want to work with these people if they behave like that? And I think I used to go to interviews with the mindset that I wasn't just being interviewed, I was also interviewing the people for the job. And if you go with that attitude that it's not just a one-way process, if you're on set and you've got things you need to talk about and you're treated badly, then you're probably with the wrong people, I think. I'd say. So don't be afraid of it. And I think George is also right. The industry is slowly changing. I think that bullying, I'm the director, I can make you work 24 hours a day and in a pit of snakes if I want to, has gone out. People have more respect for people and sort of understand that those creative needs of autistic, disabled people can actually be a positive on a set, because I never see those restrictions as a restriction. I always see them as something I work with to bring something unusual or different to the set that I wouldn't have had before. So you want to work with open-minded people, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like going off both your points, when you're asking for yourself, you're also asking for everybody else. Or like trying to, like it's a collective. So you're trying to help make everybody feel comfortable. Okay, so this one I struggle with quite a lot. Do you get stuck on needing to make your work perfect, and how do you overcome that? And for me, I think this is a work in progress, so no worries if it's also a work in progress for you.
Well, I am a bit of a perfectionist at times. Like when it comes to history, what costumes the warriors wore and what they did look like, and but I think I get them accurate enough. And
Well, you do a lot of research before.
and I do a lot of
Yeah.
research, especially into horrible histories.
Perfection is a weird thing, though, isn't it? Because when you look at nature and you look at life, very little of it is perfect. And it's the imperfections which actually make them interesting.
I'm a huge perfectionist. I've always been sort of like pushed to do everything perfectly, and I think also because of my autism, I have a very specific standard of how things should be, and that's really hard. And I think it was really important for me to remember that you know, sometimes things are better when you take breaks and you get perspective. It's like, Archimedes taking a bath, and that's when he realized how to calculate what was it, density or what? I can't remember. I don't know science. But the moral of that story is take a bath. And resting has been such a huge part of my process now, because I used to be very like just keep doing it, and that sort of mania you get from continuing to do stuff is great, but it burns you out, and the more you're like that, the more you're just going to pick on everything you do, and you'll be so judgmental of your own work, and that's really not good. And once you rest and have some perspective, um, things seem so much better, and you don't have to keep pushing yourself to make it perfect. So, yeah, don't be hard on yourself is what I would say, because I'm still working this out. I'm still awful at this. I'm such a perfectionist, and I never know when to stop. But I'm learning that resting and finding things that aren't film or aren't this that are fun that I can do, to step away, getting enough sleep, stuff like that is really helpful.
Yeah, I guess it's about like filling your cup so then you can continue to drink from it. I don't know where that phrase was going, but yeah. Cool. So we are basically at time. I will ask a quick question, do an outro, and then we are done. So thank you very much, you two, three. So real quick, what advice would you give to young neurodivergent people who want to be creative but aren't sure where to start? And I feel like we kind of went on this with you, Georgia, but yeah, I think it's knowing where to start is always such a difficult thing.
I say follow your dreams and follow your heart.
That's perfect.
Yeah, you're right. I think just doing something. If this, it sounds so obvious, but I've always felt that even if I'm doing something and I think this is terrible and it's not getting me anywhere, at least I'm doing something, and then from that I can be like, okay, I didn't enjoy doing that and I really didn't like making this, so I'm going to make something else that I think I might like. And also, you start to build a portfolio as well when you do that. And then as you build your portfolio, you can start to like curate what, is most representative of you and what's not. But even, if film isn't your thing, or you don't feel quite ready to make films, writing about films, and sharing that with people if you feel comfortable, because, getting your voice out there and for people to see. So I mean, I got started because I was writing a blog about film, or film and autism, and different films and how I interpreted it through my autism. And I don't think anyone would read it, because it was just a way for me to vent about the things, my hyperfixations and the things that I liked. And people really liked it. And it's from that I've really gotten opportunities. So it doesn't even have to be actual filmmaking, just, if there's something you're really interested in, write about it, make something about it, and share that if you feel comfortable, because that's when people will, see that you have maybe similar interests and want to work together, and it kind of goes from there. So yeah, just keep creating things and keep doing things.
I've been doing the B-Movie fan club for 12 years now, where I show an old film, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, near the end of every month, and I'm still going on with it.
Yeah, I think in Robin's looking, we've got a small independent cinema in Hastings, but I'd say look out for those sort of things. If you can find an independent cinema who's willing to have you come on board, because there are funds out there to help young programmers, which are really important. And if you can find a small theatre company, a small cinema company who's willing to give you a chance to program something, direct something, write a little scene, just start that way. And I think working with other people is really important. It's hard work being a freelancer and being on your own. And I'm a writer as well, so I spend a lot of time on my own writing, which it's hard work because you need stimulus from other people. And the other thing is, Don't be afraid of sharing your ideas. I think a lot of people think that the industry is all about people stealing other people's ideas, and it's not. The bad people, the rubbish people, will steal your ideas, but you don't want to work with them anyway. The good people won't. They'll see your ideas and go, I want to work with this person. So don't be afraid of sharing your ideas. Don't be afraid of working with other people and having a go. I think George is right. Have a go. I mean, you know, behind me at the moment is a shelf full of scripts. Some of them have been done, some haven't, but I never stopped writing and I never stopped giving them out to people, because you never know who you're going to work with, who might be the next inspiring person for you to work with. So George is right. Get it out there, do it, make it. If it's bad, you'll learn from it. If it's great, you'll learn from it.
And what great advice to finish up on. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Stimming Pool is out 28th of March. We'll probably post a link somewhere or something to let everybody watching watch it. But yeah, thank you so much. And this has been such just a lovely time to learn from you. And I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been really great.
Lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
all.
you. Bye.
Go make stuff, everybody. Go make stuff.